All right, so after what I think is another year of a well played playing wild card tournament, with the winners being the Brooklyn Nets for the 7th seed in the East, the Atlanta Hawks being the 8th seed in the East, the New Orleans Pelicans being the 8th seed in the West, and the Minnesota Timberwolves being the 7th seed in the West. I know a lot of people still feel a way about it because there should be some parameters to it, especially just as far as how many games you should be within the 7th seed for the 7th seed to have to compete in the playing tournament. But just with the teams we got and the names we got and the players we got to see, I think the play-in was a success again. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's still just a thing because people are still just looking at the regular season and not trying to include it. They're just looking at it as the old way. But the NBA is getting exactly what you want out of it, and there's more games that feel like the playoffs or the finals.
No, for sure. And with that being said, I'm John W.
Fresh X.
And it's the Hoopers Hour on Nothing But Net Radio, presented to you by Dash Radio. I seen I think his name on Twitter is @DimeDropper. He posts a lot of old school video NBA clips, just teaching people the game. And he had an interesting thought. He was like, this would have been around when the Jordan Wizards, when Jordan was on the Wizards, maybe they would have made the playoffs, because even at that age, would you pick somebody in a one-game elimination over Jordan?
I mean, they would have been in the play-in, so they would have had the opportunity to make the playoffs.
No, right, yeah.
So I could have seen them having the chance to make it easily, for sure. And especially in one game for that last year, they would have had a good chance to make it.
I definitely agree. Like I say, and with that, the playoffs officially started on was that Friday? They started? No, Saturday.
Right.
And we've had a couple good games. We've had some, have we had any blowouts?
I mean, Philly was a 20-point win.
Yeah.
And really probably was bigger than that. Golden State, they pulled away from the Nuggets. I can't remember what their final was, but yeah. Then I feel like the Hawks, Miami, you could throw all them kind of in there.
Hawks, yeah. So out of all, like I say, because this is playoff time and everybody's gonna be super locked in, especially coaches and the coaching staff trying to get all their scouting reports done. Which player you think is gonna that had an excellent season, you think is gonna kind of struggle a bit to start the playoffs? With that being in mind, with coaches being ready for you and locked in with their scouting reports.
No player in particular. The team I see struggling the most overall is just Memphis, because I think they got a pretty tough matchup, and a team that can match up well with what they have on the floor. A player in particular, I mean, you got some new people that's entering the playoffs. Zach LaVine's first time. It's not Trey's first time, but Atlanta has some injuries. Capella's out. John Collins looks like he should be out. The player that's probably had the most time, actually, I take it all back, is going to be Jokic. Missing the other players, and Golden State being such an experienced team, they're going to really lock in on him. So I think that's going to make it even tougher for the Nuggets going forward. So yeah, I can see them really locking in on him.
All right. I don't know, today's Sunday. We had a really good play. We had some really good games today, and one in particular, which I think everybody think is going to be the best series in general anyway. The Boston Celtics and the Brooklyn Nets came down to Boston getting a 1-point win, 115-114 on a Jason Tatum layup. That game was tough all night. Boston played really good defense, especially on Kevin Durant, not giving him space to shoot. Of course, Boston with their lengthy wing defenders and smart interior defenders, and Al Horford and Daniel Tice. I think a lot of people had Brooklyn winning this series, even if they lose this first game, because they just figure, that KD and Kyrie will figure it out. But how tough is it going to be for Brooklyn to win this series, especially going down 0-1?
Yeah, good series good opening game from Boston. You saw the effects that the defense could be. Brooklyn figured out real early. You can't really hunt for certain switches with them overall. The only switches that they could really get was size advantages. So they tried to get Derek White a few times, even though he's a solid defender. It's just the fact that Kyrie was quicker than him and KD could shoot over him. But it's not. KD will win the matchup, or Kyrie can win the matchup just because they're better players and they're really good offensive players and they can make tough shots. But I saw one time when like KD, he went and got the switch, and the switch was like Al Horford. That's not like something you gonna hunt, because Al Horford he's a really good perimeter defender. He's a good defender, period. So stuff like that is gonna have to be different. I'm surprised that Brooklyn didn't play with more size, and this is why I respect Steve Nash as a coach, but I still feel like he's just too much into his trial phase certain times. The last time, I don't know if that was the last game. I believe it was the last time they played Brooklyn. They started with a lineup of it was Kyrie, KD, Steph Curry, Drummond, and Nick Claxton. And although Bruce Brown, like, he ended the season really well, which is more likely why they went to that lineup. He ended the season really well, shot 40% for the season from three, and he was really hot from three after the All-Star break. Like, I think the numbers like 45 to 48%. I don't know off the top of my head, but they played Boston better that last time they played them because they went big to start. And I think that's just what they're gonna have to do in this series. Honestly, I feel like they're gonna have to play bigger because Boston has long players on the court, and that, you know, you dominating the rebounding. You know, that's gonna lead. That's when rebounding is like really lopsided. It's not surprising when that team wins the games or whatever. So I think Brooklyn gonna have to pull out some size in this series.
I definitely agree. I think even not just size, but mobility with that size, like Nick Claxton is probably gonna have to play. I think Nick Claxton,
he can move too. Right, you know what I mean? At least move enough. You know what I mean?
All right. So, and I think he's gonna have to take up some of those Andre Drummond minutes, because I just don't know how effective Andre Drummond is gonna be in the series. Maybe even get LaMarcus Aldridge out there a little bit. But just to KD real quick, I
think he can help. He gonna help rebounding wise.
Andre Drummond. Oh yeah. Don't completely take him out the lineup.
Drummond today, his problem was he got stupid fouls. If he would have stayed on the court, I feel like he'd be okay, because he's not that big of a factor. I don't feel like Boston plays such a switching offense where they're gonna make him guard somebody he's uncomfortable guarding necessarily. And then Al Horford, they're not gonna really feature him. So I think the problem with Drummond is his dumb fouls. And he just plays like he doesn't have the IQ to be on the court with the players he's on the court with at the time, honestly, because some of his fouls just were stupid. It was just like, your problem on the court isn't even a physical disadvantage. It's just you making dumb plays.
Right,
you a liability IQ wise.
No, I can agree with that, Gooch. Like, I ain't necessarily saying take Drummond out the lineup. I just think Nick Claxton would be, like I say, with that foot speed, probably would be a better matchup, even defensively.
Claxton got to make free throws, though.
That is really
you got to be at least 70% from the line when you're gonna be playing these minutes.
Right. But like I say, going to KD, who kind of struggled tonight. Like I say, Boston started off early with Grant Williams on him in shade and Al Horford to his side and kind of a quasi-man zone. And, you know, like, it's not, we don't see KD struggle often. But how do you think not how do you think he's going to approach game two, but knowing that Boston want to come out and guard him physically and get into their space, how do you think he's going to adjust in game two from game one?
Yeah, I think he'll make the adjustment, because he usually adjusts he's seen every lineup that somebody can throw him, every defense. And, you know, sometimes there are times when he doesn't adjust in the moment, especially if his shot isn't falling to some of the physical play of the referees, because referees could call it either way. Because truth be told, honestly, they called a lot of fouls in the first quarter, but there was still a lot of stuff that they kind of let them get away with that I could see easily being fouls, and it ended up being one of those nights where he shoots 15 shots from the line or whatever. But I think they got to be better with moving him around, because it's always funny that, you know, you're going to give people credit for playing him tough. Grant Williams did play him tough early, but he's not guarding him one-on-one. I'm not giving him credit for that one. Literally, every time he touches the ball, you literally already got the man.
Like,
even his man shading, waiting on you to make a move. Like, you're not guarding him one-on-one at all. Kyrie saw a lot of one-on-one coverage because Marcus Smart is on him. And when they put Jason Tatum on KD, they felt good with that. But overall, you're not guarding him one-on-one. But they were able to be physical with him, and it was one of those games where the refs let them play it physically. And especially when you got to adjust to the refs doing it at the end of the day. Whether things are fouls or not fouls, when the refs calling it a particular type of way, no matter right or wrong. I'm a real big component of it doesn't matter if it is a foul or if it isn't. If we gone 2 quarters and he's not calling that a foul, or we've gone 2 quarters and they are calling that a foul, that's how they're gonna call the game today. So that's the rule today.
Right.
When you got a chance to talk to the ref, I guess obviously you can talk to them if they're listening and try to let them see your point, and maybe that helps. But about 2 quarters in, and sometimes stuff changed in the fourth evenly. I throw that out there, but about 2 quarters in, you could tell the refs they letting us get away with this today, so I'm gonna do this today, or they not calling this today, so I gotta do something else. So and that's the playoffs, because they will let you be. Maybe they're trying to gauge too how physical can we let them be before the players get out of hand, before the crowd get out of hand. Mm-hmm. I can see when it's such talent on the floor, I think the refs recognize what they watching. KD on the court, Kyrie, Jaylen Brown's a really aggressive player. Jason Tatum's aggressive. Marcus Smart he flops a little bit too much for me, but I respect his defense because he's legit a really good defensive player. Officially a finalist for Defensive Player of the Year. Al's a smart player, so you got some kind of physical players, but you also got really good talented players. You don't really want to get in the way of it sometimes too. So the refs recognize what they're seeing, but I think KD, he didn't adjust to the physical play, which led to some of his careless turnovers early in the game.
No, for sure. Like I said, Kyrie also played magnificently in this game to kind of end a good run during the end of the season. And of course, like you expect that from Kyrie, but shout out to him for going out there and playing hard the whole game and trying to help his team get a win, which they almost did. He went on a run. He went on a little mini run at the end of the fourth quarter.
Truth be told, as bad as the Nets did, as bad as they did play today, they really should have won the game. Those last 2 possessions were like really bad, and then the last offensive possession, where they was trying to find something, they ended up just kind of. I feel like they should have been more aggressive. Basically, they just settled for Kyrie going ISO. Right. I felt like they should have tried to find something, and if that wasn't there, then you get the 10 seconds on the clock. All right, now go ISO, opposed to just letting this wasn't a game to just let it run down. But Kyrie was so hot at the end. But you gotta always. I just always think if you're a team that, even though they make timely stops, they did make some stops. When they play defense, their defense will look good. But when you're a team that kind of lives more so on your offense, I always feel like you can't just wind down the clock and be like, we'll just try to get a stop. No, we gotta extend the lead. So they should have been more purposeful with that, I think.
No, yeah, I agree with that. And over the Boston side, who Boston, like I say, picked up the win today on the game winner from Jason Tatum. Him and Jaylen Brown both played well today, offensively and defensively. And I know they started the season off with some struggles where it got to a point where some people were saying maybe you should separate them or trade one of them, or they just wasn't going to work out together. But to see how they start the season around, even from, like, say, the initial Marcus Smart comments earlier in the year about them, need to become better playmakers, which I think they took that challenge and they accepted it, and they've both done that. They took the challenge defense to Jason Tatum the majority of the time, a lot of times on KD, especially on the wing. Jaylen Brown picking up KD when he could, Kyrie when he could. Knowing you have 2 young wing players who are both dedicated offensively, defensively, and just to working hard in the game, how much easier does it make that for a Marcus Smart, who's more of a role player, utility player, who does a lot of good things, a Al Horford, who's a veteran, who's just out there to make good, smart plays, a Daniel Tice, who's out there to pick up what he can pick up. How important are those 2 players for that team?
Right, and Marcus Smart earlier in the year, I always thought it was funny. He called him out about being a better playmaker when he's the point guard of the team. But through all of that, Marcus Smart has stepped up his playmaking, which they really needed, honestly, and him making a play is how they won the game, and then he made the pass or whatever. But Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, when you got like 2 wings like that, 2 all-star wing players that legit mesh with each other and have a good relationship, I just don't ever think it's smart to break them up. We've seen like the potential of what Kawhi and Paul George could be, and then obviously the god of it all, the apex of them all, is the Jordan Pippen.
Right.
It never made sense to really break them up. But when you got those 2, and especially since I feel like it's been leveled off of knowing Jaylen Brown on any other team is probably your number one go-to player, and he had nights where he's the go-to player for Boston. But I think overall, especially since I feel like he's took his game to another level, and after Marcus Smart's comments, he upped his playmaking also. Jason Tatum, he had 8 assists today, 7 in the first half, I believe. Knowing the rankings as far as them, as we find it kind of going through Jason in the half court, we play through Jaylen Brown in transition, because if you notice, when they go in transition, they look for Jaylen a lot more because of how aggressive he can get to the basket. But when they slow stuff down in the half court, it'll probably go to Jason more. I feel like that just let everybody else being able to lock into what their positions are. Marcus Smart did get better as a playmaker because he realized they didn't just need him shooting those threes where he was always at the bottom of the league. He was always at the bottom of the league percentage-wise for the amount of threes that he took. Like, people who shoot at this volume, the percentage of them, you're last. He was always that person, and now he's looking to pass more. I always felt like you knew what you was gonna get out of Al Horford. Like, Al just needed to be in the situation that he needed to be in. He's gonna be a professional. He's gonna play hard, good defense, and then bringing Daniel Tice back, I just think was comfortable for them because they know him, and then he knows Boston. Even though you got a new coach, but it's overall the same players. The coach who was there when you was there is the GM now. It just all makes sense. But I think Jason Tatum taking another step this year, and just some more defined roles with him and Jaylen Brown's role has helped the team overall.
No, for sure. And of course, like I said, this is just game one of a possible 7-game series. What is it that you think Ime is going to try to relate to the team after this game, after this win, honestly?
Really just to keep being physical with them, trying to push the boundaries of what the refs will let you do as far as just being physical. And I think overall they played really clean physical basketball too, not even stuff that necessarily would have been called fouls, just them. They just guarded up on them. Like I see a lot of times in the NBA nowadays, team players, they just really lag back. They just take the picks. They don't pressure the basketball. You know that Kyrie because mainly you're going through Kyrie, KD, and then Seth is going to create for himself, and Dragic is going to create for themselves overall. Everybody else is probably if LaMarcus Aldridge plays, they might run some stuff for him. But those guys are going to create for themselves. But overall, when they are creating for themselves, all of them, honestly, they run the little actions for them, but even when they run something for himself, if he doesn't score directly off the action, he does kind of go ISO for a second. Dragic usually go ISO for a second. So even though that they can beat you ISO, because all 4 of them, especially the main 3, KD, Kyrie, and Seth, they can all, just because Dragic is up there in age at this point. Right. He didn't play the whole year, basically. That they can get whatever they want offensively. At least if you pressure them, even if they beat you, making Kyrie have to dribble 4 more times than he want to is a win, because it's like, all right, you making him use energy that
you probably taking him out of rhythm.
Right? Yeah, you taking him out of rhythm. He using more energy. So I rather you get them tough buckets, because you gonna get some misses in between that or whatever. So it was just in Boston. They had a personnel to guard them too, because Marcus Smart is in the defensive player of the year conversation. Jason Tatum is an all-NBA defender, and I think Jaylen Brown's a better defender than him, in my opinion. So that's an all-NBA defender also. And Tatum's taking the challenge of defending KD. Overall, Marcus Smart is on Kyrie, but in that fourth quarter, especially before his nose, they was trying to get his nose to stop bleeding. Jaylen Brown was on Kyrie, guarding him, pressuring him, just to give him some more size, something bigger to look at. So, Boston got a good chance to, not only win this series. Boston has they could beat anybody in the NBA and make a run to the finals or whatever. So I'm really telling them we got to keep being physical and keep leaning on the defense.
No, I definitely agree with that. Like I said, one more time, Boston did win that game over the Brooklyn Nets 115-114. To step away from the playoffs real quick, the NBA put out their awards finalists for this past season. I'm going to go over them real quick and we can give our thoughts. For NBA Coach of the Year, we got Taylor Jenkins from Memphis, Eric Spoelstra of the Miami Heat, Monty Williams of the Phoenix Suns. For the NBA Rookie of the Year, we got Scotty Barnes from Toronto, Kate Cunningham from Detroit, Evan Mobley from Cleveland. For the NBA Sixth Man of the Year, we got Tyler Hero from Miami, Cam Johnson from Phoenix, and Kevin Love from Cleveland. For the Defensive Player of the Year, we got Mikal Bridges from Phoenix, Rudy Gobert from Utah, Marcus Smart from Boston. For Most Improved, we got Darius Garland from Cleveland, John Morant from Memphis, and DeJounte Murray from San Antonio. And for the NBA MVP Award, we have Giannis Antetokounmpo from Milwaukee, Joel Embiid from Philadelphia, and Nikola Jokic from the Denver Nuggets. First and foremost, I think all these players have earned their spots to be right here, but which player do you think is the most surprising to see on this list? Like a name you haven't heard for any of these awards?
Maybe Ja for Most Improved. I think people, for one, they just want to give somebody in Memphis an award so badly that they put him. While Ja, I think it's obvious that Ja improved dramatically this year. He took another step to being another elite player. But this would have been like giving LeBron Most Improved after he goes from winning Rookie of the Year to becoming an All-Star to the first time he's in the MVP conversation. I think having Ja in that position to win that award takes away. First of all, it took Jordan Poole out from having a chance to be in the finals. It's going to take it away from a player that actually should win the award. He's gonna win the award, and he should win it because he did improve. But Rookie of the Years don't win Most Improved in their third year in the league. Like I don't even think why. Like I get what people are gonna say why he should be in there, but show me a Rookie of the Year that's won the Most Improved player like 3 years in. This is the trajectory that you were supposed to go on, especially that's when. From not only winning Rookie of the Year, then being drafted number 2, that's when that comes into play, the trajectory of it. So it's not like he didn't play his rookie season and he missed all rookie or whatever, and then he had a tough second year. He won Rookie of the Year. Even in his second year, he was having a really great second year. Then he got hurt, missed some time, and came back and still had a good year. They made the playoffs and stuff like that. I just don't think Josh should have been in the Most Improved conversation. It took away from Jordan Poole getting that opportunity to be recognized. But I do think he's going to win it. I think he should win it out of those finalists. But I think that was just a way, for one, the talking started up recently as when it started becoming clear that okay, the finalists for MVP is going to be Jokic, Embiid, and Giannis. It was like, all right, how can we give him something for the season that he's having? Honestly, that's what it feels like.
No, yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like I said, I think Ja being nominated and possibly winning the Most Improved is a consolation prize for being good, but not necessarily being like MVP finalist good this year, which he did have a great season. Honestly, any other year he probably would be NBA MVP finalist.
Because he still could be a top 5 MVP candidate. He could still finish 4th or 5th in MVP voting.
Like I said, this is just the top 3. It's not like these are the only people who getting voted for MVP. It's just the top 3 of the more likely winners. And for Defense Player of the Year, we have a wing player and a guard, along with Rudy Gobert, that being Mikal Bridges and Marcus Smart. Do you think having those 2 other positions, then there not being another big man or front court player, kind of gives it a chance for a wing or guard to win Defensive Player of the Year this year?
Yeah, I think one is going to win. And really the finalists, it's because people have already voted. So the finalists are the players that they actually know got the 3 most votes. I think it's a real good chance that I think more than likely it is going to be Marcus Smart or Mikal Bridges. I think Mikal Bridges is going to win. But I think it's definitely more than likely going to be a wing. And it makes sense to start recognizing wing defenders, especially in an era where the game is played on the perimeter more than ever.
No, for sure. Like I said, last day for media votes. Well, the day media votes go in is usually the Friday of the last week of the NBA season. So, like I said, these are already picked and determined. MVP, of course, is going to be another highly debated topic all year, despite who wins it. Regardless if that's Joel Embiid for his continued dominance all year, Nikola Jokic for the numbers he's put up, advanced and just the regular stats, or Giannis, who also had a dominating season. Like, it's just like Joel Embiid with his team finishing 3rd place in the East. I don't think this is a fair question to ask, but I'm asking anyway because I know at some point somebody else is going to ask it. But do you think this is one of the more highly debated MVP races?
Yeah, probably so, since it's not a clear winner and any one of the 3 could win. I wouldn't be surprised if any one of them won. I think it's a really good argument for any one of them. I have Embiid winning, and then if Embiid, I think Giannis will win. But I think most people think Jokic is going back to back.
That Jokic is going back to back.
I think that's what most people have. I think Embiid is going to win. And after Embiid, I honestly think I will have Giannis next.
Right.
But I think Jokic has a good chance to go back to back. I think that's the pick that a lot of people have.
Yeah. And I don't think, like I said, I don't think there's I think all three of them have a good, strong case as well. I don't think there's much that separates the MVP cases. I think to see Jokic go back to back after seeing Giannis go back to back, because I don't think how often do we see that in the NBA where you have an MVP go back to back twice?
Right, yeah. So they got a good chance to do it this year.
No, for sure. But back to the NBA playoffs, one of the more interesting matchups, I think, just because how people are perceiving it, is the Toronto Raptors and the Philadelphia 76ers, where people are giving Philly the credit for being the more talented team. But I think a lot of people are giving off that they think Nick Nurse is the better coach, which could lead to the Toronto Raptors winning the series. Philly is already up 1-0 in the series after a great night from Tyrese Maxey and kind of below his standard night from Joel Embiid. But do you think, I guess this is which do you think is going to hold stronger, the talent of Philly or the perceived coaching advantage of Nick Nurse?
Right, and I think people are going to say that Nick's a better coach than Doc because Doc's blown wins or whatever. I just think they're two different type of coaches. I feel like Doc obviously leans more on his relationship with the players, being a former player, while Nick is probably better with certain X and O's and stuff like that. But I don't think either way is wrong. They both have one championship. But I think Philly wins the series pretty easily. I think Toronto got hot at the end of the year, and that's why they ended up as high in the seasons as they are. But I don't think they're a true 5 seed, honestly. And Philly really was more so at the top of the league. They was in first place for a good amount of time this year. I think they probably was in first to second longest after Miami. Right. It's either Philly or Brooklyn after that, but Philly, I feel like they just gonna overall be too much for Toronto. Even missing Thibault in those Toronto games since he's not gonna be able to play since he's not vaccinated. James Harden and Embiid, I feel like will be enough. I feel like you're gonna get those big games from Maxey, and whenever Tobias Harris is looking as good as he did the other day, the other team is really in trouble.
Do you expect at least one 20-20 game from Joel Embiid this series? Because, like I said, they don't really have the single person who can kind of guard him one-on-one, so it's probably going to be a lot of nights. It's going to be a couple games in the series with a couple front court players in foul trouble, and he gets to the free throw line a lot.
Yeah, easily, because, he was 19 and 15 in this game, and it wasn't his typical game. He just averaged 30 this year, so he could easily have 40 this next game, so I wouldn't be surprised. I would more so expect like a 40-15 game before or 20-20 game, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him get a 20-20 game.
But do you think Nick Nurse has anything, like say Nick Nurse is definitely probably one of the better excellent coaches in the league right now? Do you think he has any kind of strategies that could slow down Joel Embiid to the point where he is neutralized for a couple games in this series?
Not necessarily. I think the best he can hope for is, he has some schemes where he's seeing multiple people and you can make him turn the ball over and either rush his shots or just shoot some tougher shots so he's more inefficient. But overall, honestly, in the NBA, these are the best players in the world, especially as the playoffs. I feel like you can run whatever at these players, but when you just don't have the personnel to really do it, it really just comes down to how good of a night a player is having or not. Right. Because, even if you make me miss, even if I miss a shot, if it's a shot that I want to take, if you're getting the stuff you want to take, you just never know when those are going to start falling. So I just feel like the most he can do is you send multiple people at him, so you start making him have to think with those double teams, and then you can get turnovers or rushed or tough shots.
That definitely makes sense. The Minnesota Timberwolves and the Memphis Grizzlies is probably gotta be one of the final series. A lot of young talent in this team from both sides. Like I said, Minnesota got the game 1 win, kind of still a home court advantage, and coming into the playoffs, I think the Memphis Grizzlies was kind of looked at as the one maybe higher seed that probably had a chance to have a short playoff, whether that's losing in the second round or the first round. Minnesota was definitely hot coming into this game, starting at the All-Star break, getting D'Angelo Russell back, who even he kind of struggled as well. He kind of struggled in that game. What do you think Memphis changes up to kind of pick up the next win?
Overall, they're gonna have to get creative with their schemes to stop, Anthony Edwards. Gonna have to be more physical with him. Just whatever you could do. Dylan Brooks is a solid defender. He's gonna have to make it tougher on him. You can't just let him walk close to 40-point games and stuff like that. And that's gonna be kind of the key for them. Honestly, I think that it's really kind of that simple. You can't just let him go out for 36 points. And they're gonna need bigger production from Bane offensively, I would say. This is a series coming in while some were skeptical of Memphis, wondering if it was just a great regular season because they come into the year and nobody expected them to do what they did. So it's tougher in the playoffs, and Minnesota matches up with them at the end of the day. They do have some players with some star power behind their name, and I think they have role players that understand their role. Malik Beasley's out there to shoot the ball, get shots, try to make threes. Vanderbilt is a defender for them. Patrick Beverly is a defender and just kind of like an energy source. Minnesota understands what they're trying to do. So, which is why I think they had a successful season this year. They finished like 11 games over 500, I think it was. But when everybody at the minimum, even if you don't succeed, you have a tough night. When everybody knows their role, I think that's just like the minimum thing that you could do to just be as prepared as possible. And so you come into the game, we talked about it on the last show, knowing that most of the stuff we probably running is through Cat, because Cat is their best player right now. Or they're all-star right now. But we running most of the stuff through Cat and Anthony Edwards, and then we closing with D'Lo. And like I said, Vanderbilt's playing defense. Malik Beasley, he's out there to be a microwave scorer. Got a good young coach in Chris Finch. Minnesota's gonna play Memphis. They're gonna play them tough, and it's rare you meet any team in the league, any team, even the championship contenders. It's rare that you meet teams with, like, when you get teams that have either 3 potential all-stars or 3 potential players that average 20 points, it's always gonna be tough to beat those teams. And Minnesota, they got that.
No, yeah, I definitely agree with that. And coming into the series, I think a lot of people thought Memphis was going to have if not just a full-out advantage, because Cat is a great player in the front court, but they will be able to match him with the bodies they could throw at him in Jaren Jackson and Steven Adams. Steven Adams was kind of unplayable in that first game because he's not going to give you too many buckets, and he's just not necessarily going to be able to guard Cat when he's facing up a lot. Definitely got to keep Steven Adams in the lineup, but do you expect more Jaren Jackson at center with Zaire and Kyle Anderson taking more of those 4 minutes?
I would play Brandon Clark.
Brandon Clark. My bad. I forgot about Brandon.
I don't think they're going away from Steven Adams, just because even though he's not going to score, he still provides good passing offensively. I think he'd be better going forward, but they are going to need some big minutes from those players, Zaire, Brandon Clark, and Slow-Mo.
Nah, yeah, I definitely agree. How do you think Minnesota keep their momentum from game 1 going to game 2, especially with a young core like this who hasn't necessarily been in his position to keep it going?
I think, for one, you have Anthony Edwards, who don't have a track record in the playoffs, so this is all fresh for him. And, he's embracing his moment. I feel like you feel comfortable knowing that D'Lo's not going to shoot as bad as he did. I mean, he had 29 in the closeout game. And even with, I think he had 10 points, but he still finished with, did he almost have a double-double? I believe he almost had like 10 assists. I think he had 8 or 9 assists. Maybe it was 7, somewhere like that. He had a good amount of assists. So I know you feel like D'Lo's going to play better. Or whatever. So if I'm Minnesota, I feel like it's still some things that could have went better for us that really didn't, and they was able to get the win.
Nah, yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like I said, game 2 should definitely be a great game. Ja, who could have played, well, not necessarily could have played better. Finished 8 for 18. He had a good game. But I think Ja and that whole team is going to come out ready to go for game 2 because, like I said, you don't want to go down 0-2 going to Minnesota where you could possibly go down 0-3 because Minnesota has definitely been one of the better teams at home court. At home, in the NBA this year, especially following, like I said, the All-Star break where they really took off once the team got healthy. The Miami Heat and the Atlanta Hawks are going at it in the first round. That's the 1-8 seed. Miami picked up a big blowout win today against the Atlanta Hawks, who I think a lot of people's trendy pick to maybe pull an upset in the first round against one of the high seeds because they had a player like Trae Young. But Miami didn't really let Trae Young establish himself as a scorer or as a playmaker in this first game, switching out some of those picks and not, covering him real well. What does Nate McMillan do to kind of adjust to help Trae Young get off and get some better looks next game?
I think, for one, with Miami, it's not going to be so much with Trae on the ball because they have players that can defend him, honestly. They have people that can get physical with him, people that's not going to mind chasing him around. And the switches won't necessarily work because when you're switching, the bigs are Bam and P.J. Tucker. So, P.J. Tucker isn't a big, and Bam is one of the best defenders in the league. So, you're not really going to be seeking for those. I'm not playing pick and roll with them. You're not going to just take advantage of getting in the paint with them. So, I think, and then on ball, you're going to have, like, Jimmy's going to guard Trae. Who else guarded him? Kyle Lowry. So
Big Depot to get some minutes on him.
Right. So, you have players that, other than Kyle Lowry, they have size and they can still get physical with them, but they can also still move with them too or whatever. So I just think you just got to move differently. Like I would play some DeLon Wright sets for them together so then Trae can come off the ball and just try to get him easier buckets overall.
No, yeah, I definitely agree because I just feel like being able to play off the ball a little bit will help him, just lose some defenders just trying to run the court with him, and you can still set up some playmaking and scoring opportunities with him. Who do you think needs to step up offensively for the Hawks in this series? We've seen a comp like Gallo stepped up big in the playing game. Bogey hit some big shots. But who do you think is going to have to really be that second consistent scorer for the Hawks to have a chance to win this series?
Well, definitely Gallo, because Gallo is a player that the Hawks go through for isolation plays because he can shoot over most players in the league. He is a good offensive player overall, but because he knows his spots and he knows how to get there, you can put him on the post, high post, low post, and he'll hit him with over the left shoulder, right shoulder, fade, jump shot. I think between Gallo and then I've been saying for a while that they still need it from DeAndre Hunter because he's the guy that they expected to step up. We saw him, starting to progress last year a little bit, but then he goes through them injuries, and they've clearly been setbacks as far as not even just his confidence necessarily, but just when you miss time and you haven't already just kind of confirmedly put yourself in the second man spot and you've been out, I can see it being tough to come out there and they actually running stuff for you and really looking for you to score. So I just feel like he got to be more aggressive trying to do that. And they need a little bit from everybody because I think they're going to need Bogdanovich to control the second unit because, he's coming off the bench now. He's been coming off the bench for a while, but, getting good shots, making his shots, running the second team. And, Kevin Huerter, they're going to need him to be able to be efficient, knock down his threes, and, create at times also, too. Because if everybody else is knocking down their shots, that'll open it up for Trae a little more, too.
Not sure. No, the Miami who won the game. And I think they played as good as they can play. I'm pretty sure they can play better and go to another level. But, like, Duncan Robinson missed one shot. Max Strus was knocking down his open jumpers. Jimmy Butler played like the all-star that he can be. Bam was great defensively and offensively. I don't think this is one of those. The Hawks can definitely make it a series, especially like say once they get to Atlanta with a play like Trae. But I don't see Miami slipping. I think they're gonna stay focused. But how do you think Miami stay focused in a series like this where they can kind of look past the Hawks because I feel like they think they're the better team and they know they're the better team? How do they stay focused with that in mind?
I think Miami has to be thinking clear. They have to be like they were in the bubble, honestly, and the focus got to be on strictly getting to the NBA Finals. And as the 1 seed, the 8 seed really shouldn't affect you. And technically, the Hawks aren't even the 8 seed; they really the 9 seed. They finished 9th, and they just wanted to play in. So that's a team that you shouldn't struggle with. You know, even when they go on their runs, you should be able to get ugly wins against them. I think Miami really should line themselves up to sweep Atlanta. Even though you got Trae Young, so I don't think they will sweep them. But you just got to be on a mission to kind of beat them and then be able to get rest whenever you can get rest. Miami was a team that was banged up this year. Jimmy missed a lot of games. Bam missed some games. Kyle Lowry missed some games. Oladipo just came back. You know, so anytime you can get rest in the playoffs, I think is key. So, and who knows how long that Philly series is going to last. So I wouldn't want Philly sitting down before I'm sitting down.
No, I definitely agree with that. And just speaking of that real quick, like I say, Miami has had a lot of injuries this year, which means they had to plug some players in to fill in some spots. I think Phil did magnificently. Yusuf, the big man, say Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, the was drafted this year, I think. Gabe Vincent.
Nah, he was there last year.
This
is his third or fourth year.
Right. And then, like I say, then you throw in players like Depot, who's finally came back at the end of the year. Kyle Lowry, who was out, missed a lot of part of the year, and Jimmy Butler as well. Nobody talks about how deep Miami is, but do you think at this point of the season, even to the point where you may be only looking to play 8-9 players, do you think Miami is one of the deeper teams in the playoff right now?
Yeah, I think they are, and I think Miami. I don't think Miami's one of those rare teams where having extra guys, I don't think it'll hurt them. And this is why, because Spoelstra is one of those. I don't think Spoelstra is going to stress about playing all of them. If it's one of those nights where, because Strus has stepped up and he's been making shots. If he's the one that's making shots tonight and Duncan isn't, even though Duncan has the deal clearly by Duncan coming off the bench, he'll sit him. And I'm not going to force you into my rotation if you're not helping. If Depot can help us tonight, I'm going to play him. But if not, this guy's rolling, or I just need to keep the rotation at this, I don't think Spoelstra is going to think twice about playing a 7-man rotation if that's what I got to do, an 8-man rotation if that's what I got to do. But even when they do go deeper, I think the players correctly complement each other where you can do that. Outside of Bam and Jimmy, obviously those are your best 2 players. Outside, and you could say Kyle Lowry too, because Kyle Lowry, just being a caliber of point guard that he's been, championship point guard. Those are your main players, but all of your role players are interchangeable.
Right.
So, I could see it working to Miami's favor either way, because I don't think Spoelstra is going to stress about playing certain players, but he's going to be able to swap them out when he needs to.
Nah, I definitely agree. And just real quick, just to stay on the topic of depth, because that's something you hear throughout the whole season. This team can go this many deep. This team can go this many deep at this position, 2 deep at a position, 3 deep at a position. And I know this is something you've always stressed even before we started, recording and doing the podcast. But does having being able to go 10 deep, 11 deep in the playoffs really matter? Honestly,
I don't think it do, because sometimes when you do that, when you go that deep, going 10 or 11 deep for the teams that do it, because I remember Dwayne Casey had some teams where that was their thing. It's usually the Toronto team that has all these players, and even some of the early Milwaukee teams where you can play all these players. I just think it makes the rotation confusing sometimes when you get in the playoffs, because you get stuck to play these rotations because you want to get those minutes based off of. Sometimes you just got to play off the flow of the game, honestly, when you get in the playoffs, because sometimes things don't work how they typically work. You got to really focus on that matchup for that night, or how the officials are officiating for that night or whatever. So, it's always been kind of known that in playoffs you're going to shorten that rotation. So I think it's easier for teams that already at times play a shorter rotation. But for certain teams, I think it helps, when you do got certain, it became cliche with the Warriors, that first Warriors teams that was strength in numbers, because they were like, oh, they so deep, they can play so many players. But you would go nights where you didn't see certain players, because the thing with them was we're deep in the sense that we could shorten our rotation, but switch the players who we're going to play. Like, we may give you Brandon Rush tonight, we may give you Ian Clark another night.
Right.
And that's really where it was, opposed to every night we're going to play 10 players. I just feel like when you're really thinking about getting 10 players in in a close playoff game, it just don't work.
I definitely agree with that because you're just trying too hard to figure out when it's the right because you no longer trying to figure out. Hey, I know I got to get you in now. It's like you gonna go and play through your rotations regardless, like of how if the game's out of control or if it's a close game or not.
And you really not going with the rhythm of the game if you're doing that because players are gonna be hot and cold. So if you are really sticking to your 10-man rotation, somebody could be having an off night, and you really gonna just play them because of the rotation opposed to how they contribute into the game, and you can't really experiment like that in the playoffs.
No, yeah, for sure. Utah Jazz and the Dallas Mavericks. I think this series is kind of turned in a way because the injury to Luka Doncic, who's already been announced to be out game 1 and game 2. I seen a picture of him kind of taking some shots on his leg. I don't think he should play first and foremost. But do you think this is one of them series where you talking kind of, if not walk through, just pick up an easy six game series win?
Yeah, I think they're going to pick up an easy, tough series win because they're going to be battling each other. I don't think Luka should play either. I would just rule him out, honestly. I wouldn't play around with the calf strain. Dallas has a good chance of going. I feel like with Luka healthy, Dallas had a good chance of going on a run just because I just don't feel like nobody's just that overly dominating. So if you have the best player and everybody knows their role, I just feel like you got a chance. Phoenix is the best team in the league, record-wise and all that, but I just think if you got the right opportunity, you can do what you got to do. But I wouldn't play around with Luka's health, so I think that this is going to help Utah get a fluke series win because they look way worse than they should look. I've said it a few times already. I said it again since we're on our show. I'd be really unhappy if I'm Rudy Gobert. It's not about the stats. It's not about the numbers. But to be out there and putting in the effort against 17 rebounds, being an all-NBA All-Star center, he only gets one shot. I don't think that it's no way possible you could convince me that Rudy Gobert wasn't able to get more than one shot in that game. Even if it's a forced shot, a forced play, for him to get one shot and you have all-star guards around you, that means they're not even trying to have you involved. So I'd be real upset if I was him. They're going to win this series because Luka's probably not going to play. But I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't win a game the next series, and that's what they need so they can really break this team up.
Now, I was just going to ask you that because, like, so not to get into that in the start of the playoffs, but is this one of them things where regardless of Utah win this series or not, depending on what happened in the second round, we could still see this team get broken up? Like, it'll probably take a finals appearance or a finals win to keep this team together, honestly.
Yeah, basically. I mean, that was like, people forget it now because they ended up winning, but I can remember some was saying this about the Bucks, and no matter what happens, you should break up the team. It was certain people that said no matter what happened, Budenholzer should have still got fired even they won the championship. I think that fits for this. No matter what Utah does, even if they somehow miraculously won the championship, I would change this whole team around because you're going to eventually have to choose between Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, or you're not going to get to choose because they both just going to leave anyway. But I would start trying to see what we're going to do next because the chemistry clearly just isn't there. And, you'll be able to see they should be locked in right now on winning the finals, especially because I know they finished 5th or whatever it was, but this the same team from last year that was a 1 seed. So I get it. You could drop down in the standings a little bit. Teams make some changes, et cetera, but we was a 1 seed last year. Utah's supposed to be playing for a championship.
Right.
You shouldn't be struggling against a Dallas team that don't got Luka.
No, I definitely agree with that. So.
That don't mean that Dallas can't play them tough because they have really good NBA players. Dinwiddie's really good. Jalen Brothers. They could play you well. They could play you really well, and you can still be right, and you can still know who's the better team on the court. And it's like they don't even really look better than them, but they're gonna win because Dallas is clearly wounded.
Nah, yeah, I definitely agree with that. So as we get to the playoffs, I think this is something you stress a lot. Scout reports is going to get tighter. They're going to be more detailed. They're going to, the scout reports are going to be to a point where in-game adjustments are going to be made. And that's going to make a difference from players or from the coaching staff. Is going to make a big difference. how important is it to be able to make not only game-to-game adjustments, but adjustments on the fly from play to play or time or in timeout adjustments?
Yeah, I think that's how the playoffs is won, because you going making the game-to-game adjustments is cool, but sometimes it might be too late to do it, because sometimes if they already done figured it out, that's just what they gonna do to you. So the details are what matter the most in the playoffs. So you can see, we really gonna see which players and which teams are really paying attention throughout every quarter of the game, every timeout, really trying to adjust and execute to the highest level.
Nah, I definitely agree with that. And I don't want to skip over, but the Phoenix Suns, no one seed against the New Orleans Pelicans. We seen New Orleans get a good victory over the Clippers and over San Antonio to get to this spot and make the playoffs. What is it that you're looking at from New Orleans? You don't expect them to win this series, but how well do you expect them to play, or do you expect them to play well at all?
I'm mainly trying to see, what level of competing you get out of Brandon Ingram, because I feel like what you're gonna get from CJ McCollum, but how those two continue to mesh throughout the playoffs, and then just how the younger players, Alvarado, Herb, Trey Murphy, Jackson Hayes, how they compete and just try to respond to this playoff experience. They're down 20 right now. They're clearly going to be overmatched against Phoenix. Phoenix is just a much better team, 64 wins this year. I mean, New Orleans was the play-in team. They were the 10th, so they were the last play-in team. At that, started the season where they started it. Shout out to Willie Green for turning them around, and then CJ McCollum is just continuing the progression there. But you just want to see how they compete. Who, even if they get swept, who continues to just keep trying to go at Phoenix throughout it. And I think Phoenix it's gonna be like the toughest 20-point wins that they've ever seen, because you got CJ and Brandon that can give you 80 points between them, and Herb he's a potential first team All-NBA player for years to come, All-NBA defensive player for years to come. So New Orleans, they're not gonna lay down. They're probably gonna get swept, but they're not gonna lay down this series.
Nah, for sure. Just thinking and just over to Phoenix, like say already up 20 as we're recording this, they're probably gonna win this series relatively easily. Would you consider this not necessarily a tune-up series, but one of those series where they just trying to not just build momentum, but keep that momentum going? Like they set a team record for wins this season, so that's kind of a big deal. That's important, and you definitely want to keep that momentum going.
Yeah, and this, you just want to see a different level of focus from Phoenix, because although I do think New Orleans is going to execute, and I think that does challenge Phoenix, I think this is where Phoenix, you look like the best team in the league all year, so this is where you show it, where obviously they make runs, but it's times where we just show that we're just too much for them, because even though they execute and they make amazing plays, our execution is just on another level. So it's just one of them times where it's like, yeah, we won this game by 20, but they did make it tough here or there. They went on this run here or there, but when they went on a run, we was able to stop it and correct ourselves, and you don't want to make this series any longer than it should have to be.
Nah, y'all definitely agree with this. This is definitely a series Phoenix wants to take serious, but not to a point where, you're overstressing it and overthinking these games, which should be, like I say, pretty competitive, but also at the same time pretty easy for Phoenix to win.
Right.
So I think that's gonna wrap the show up today. You got anything else you want to throw out there though?
No, just as always, appreciate the viewers and the listeners. Shout out to the Hoop Troopers. We recorded some content with them earlier, so that's gonna be dropping soon. As always, we here every Monday on the Nothing But Net channel through the Dash Radio app at 3:00. Every Wednesday, catch us at 12:00 for the Hoopers Afternoon Session on the Off the Ball Network's Facebook page and the Hoopers Twitter page. Also the Hoopers YouTube page. Anywhere podcasts are available, search the Hoopers Pod. Subscribe to us on YouTube at the Hoopers Pod on YouTube. And yeah, that's all I got.
All right, with that being said, I'm John W.
Fresh X.
And this was the Hoopers Hour on Nothing But Net Radio, presented to you by Dash Radio.